Hey Book Dragons, I'm so glad you joined me on the channel today. It's time for a book review, and I am reviewing the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, and that is Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And I absolutely loved The House in the Cerulean Sea when I read it. It was an absolute banger for me. 5 stars on the places that do stars, and just a fantastic reading experience for me. And I have to be honest, when I first heard that there was going to be a sequel to House in the Cerulean Sea, I was like, I don't know. Because the way the book ended, and I'm not going to spoil how it ended, don't worry. But the way the book ended kind of left me feeling like, oh, okay, that was a complete story. I liked the ending. It resolved just how I needed it to. And yeah, there's some things that could have carried into another book, but I feel like it didn't really need to. So when I heard that we were getting this new sequel by TJ Klune, I was like, okay, that's cool, but did we really need that? And I got the answer to my question as soon as I had finished the book. And that answer is yes. Yes, we needed this sequel. This book proved that a sequel was needed when I didn't necessarily think there was. So we're going to get right into the book review. And as I said before, this is not going to be a spoilery review. I'm going to keep this completely spoiler-free. I'm going to keep it spoiler-free for the first book as well if you have not read it. But I will say, you do need to read House in the Cerulean Sea before you pick up this one, because this is a direct sequel. It picks up right where the first book left off in terms of where the characters are at, some of the new things that are coming into their lives, and so you do need to read that first book. But if you are looking for a lot of the same feelings that the first book gave you, you are going to be very happy with this book. It's definitely a cozy fantasy, just like the first book is. It has most of the same characters. There's a few new characters, but it still has most of the same characters. So if you love the characters in the first book, you're going to feel right at home in this book. And I literally do mean right at home, because this still takes place at the orphanage from the first book, and it's very clear throughout this story that this is not an orphanage, it's more of a home. This is where these magical children feel at home. And I'll just give a quick non-spoiler summary of the first book so that we can kind of get to where we are in this book. The first book is about a man named Linus Baker who works for the department in charge of magical youth, also known as Dicamy for short, and he goes to the island of Marsyas to critique the orphanage and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do and that the children are being taken care of. He quickly discovers that this is more than just an orphanage. It is really a home. This is where these children have felt safe all this time when the rest of the world has treated them as something to be looked down on and to be feared. So this book picks up essentially that same plot line. We are presented with a new antagonist, or several antagonists rather, from the department in charge of magical youth, because not everyone is convinced that this orphanage should still exist under its current leadership. And when I say it's a cozy fantasy, you may think of books that have very low stakes. The stakes are actually very, very high in this book. There are stressful moments, but it's presented in such a way that just makes you feel warm and fuzzy and cozy, you know? And I really want to talk about the things that stood out to me that I really, really liked about this book. And the first thing is the familiarity. It brought me right back to the characters and the stories and the themes from the first book, and continued those thought lines, continued giving me more great moments with the characters that I absolutely loved from the first book. Gave me really great moments with new characters that are presented in this book. And I just had a wonderful time experiencing that over again. I laughed so hard in this book. I laughed in the other book as well, but I felt like this one ratcheted up the humor even more. And especially when it comes to dealing with the antagonist in the book, because this antagonist does not speak sarcasm. So there are moments in this book where the kids are saying things to try and placate, dare I say even patronize this antagonist. And they are just so funny because you know what they're trying to say, you know what they're trying to do, and this lady, it just goes right over her head. Like, she's all business, no fun, no sense of humor really, and the sarcasm is just heavy from the kids, and she's completely oblivious. It's just so great. I laughed so hard, and it wasn't just that made me laugh hard. There were just so many other moments aside from those interactions that made me really laugh. And especially when it comes to the unique and beautiful things that make these kids who they are. So characters like Lucy loves to listen to dead people music, and so there's a lot of great music alluded to in this book. Talia is a gnome and she loves to work in her garden, and there's a lot of really great gnomish jokes and sarcastic death threats, just like in the first book. It just makes you feel right at home because you already know and love these characters. And so moments that come into the story that carry on telling about their interests and things that you already know about them just makes it that much more fun. And this book is chock full of those moments. The plot was really satisfactory, the way it continued from the first book, but built on that momentum and built on the tension and the real threat that was presented to the orphanage and to the kids. I thought it was just excellently done. And the ending especially, man guys, the ending. And I'll take the ending in two parts. First, I'll talk about the climax of the book, and that's that point where you get to the final buildup of the tension from all the dangers that are happening to these kids, and then you finally get that happy resolution at the end of that situation. It was just so satisfactory and powerful and exciting, and it just made you want to jump out of your seat and cheer. Yes, that's what we're looking for. That's exactly what we want. That was so pleasing, guys. It was just such a great, epic moment in the book. And then as it winds down from that and you get to the final ending of the book and everything resolved, guys, I needed a box of tissues. I was crying so hard. Happy tears, of course, but I was crying. It was so, so good. So, guys, I just can't say enough good about all of those things that I liked in this book. I highly recommend that you read the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea. It's a breathtaking read. And I will talk also about the themes. And this is where it may turn some people off, because the theme of social justice that was in the first book is still very much there. And I am a firm supporter of everything that the author invested into those themes. I firmly support standing for those particular issues. But if those are things that bothered you a little in the first book, I will say that the first book and the social justice issues that it tackled is still there, but in the first book it was more subtle. In this book it is very much in your face, to the point of being heavy-handed sometimes and almost preachy. That didn't bother me because he's kind of preaching to the choir with me. TJ Klune is very outspoken on queer issues, making the world safe for the queer community, and that is very much at the forefront of this story, and something that you may feel is a little bit too preachy. I buddy read this with Joe and Mary over at Book Buds, and we had a great time reading it, but we all had a discussion about how it was a little bit heavy-handed, and that could rub some people the wrong way. So I just wanted to put that out there. Even though I don't think this book was necessarily written for an agenda and that agenda alone, it is there. So just be aware of it. It wasn't a negative for me, but it might be a negative for you. So wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. Let's talk about my rank for the book. And if there was any question what rank I'm giving this book, I would be greatly surprised. This book is going in my soaring tier. This book absolutely soared for me. It was exactly what I wanted. Even though I didn't think I needed a sequel, it was exactly what I needed and exactly what I hoped it would be once I got my hands on it, knowing that it was a sequel to one of my favorite books. So yeah, guys, this soared for me and it gets my highest ranking. In fact, this may be my book of the year. There's still a good chunk of the year left, but as of right now, this is a serious contender for my book of the year. A really pleasant surprise for a sequel. Sequels can be hit or miss, but this one nailed it in every respect, I personally think. It's my opinion. You can have a different opinion. It's not going to work for everybody probably, but it worked for me. So, let me know in the comments what you think about this book. If you liked the first book, or if you haven't read the first book, let me know that too. Let me know if you think it would be a book that you would really like, and let me know what you think about maybe reading the sequel. Let's dialogue together. I don't know if this is going to be a trilogy or if he's going to keep it to 2 books. This book kind of felt permanently final. I could be wrong because we got a sequel to the first book and I thought the first book was the end. So let me know in the comments what you think, and if you're excited to read this book or if you don't think it'll work for you, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to dialogue with you. And until next time, guys, make sure you are reading more books, and I will talk with you very soon. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to all my patrons. I really appreciate all you do to support the channel. It means a whole lot to me.